So generally speaking, investment fees in investment-linked policies or plans are usually, relatively high as compared to like other mediums or other instruments of investing, right? And this becomes a problem because most advisors get stuck here at this stage. Okay, so that being said, this is the reason this video is all about on how to overcome the objection when it comes to high investment fees. Okay, so if you are new to this channel, my name is Benjamin Ong and I'm the CEO of 2xyz, and I've created this channel because there's a ton of advisors out there that are either broke or have money, very, very rich, but still unhappy. Okay, so I hope that some of the lessons that I have learned while documenting my own process and journey will be to help you become happier, purposeful, and wealthy. Okay, so just to put a disclaimer, the purpose of this video isn't to talk about which investment instrument is better, because there's a lot of factors out there, and the context and the situation of the person who's investing matters as well. I'm not here to debate whether it's a ILP good for a specific consumer or otherwise. Okay, this is up to your own judgment and assessment, and you should know better. Okay, so but then if you're an advisor that wants to know on how to overcome like objection of investment fees, kind of like know how to manage it better, then this video is for you. Okay, so one of the main reasons why your prospects gives an objection about like investment fees is because usually they don't know what are they paying it for. So one of the more common ways of like overcoming objections about investment fees usually is like when you say the investment fee is high or the management fee is high or whatever it is, then usually we'll say things like, oh yeah, but because there's a bonus, and even after you net off the investment fees, you still get a higher return, yada yada, right? But usually, it just doesn't seem to convince, at least more often than not, doesn't really seem to convince the prospect, right? Because all they can think of is actually about the investment fees, right? And it could be 2.5, 3%, 4%, whatever it is, right? And let me just give like an analogy to solidify this idea, right? So you just imagine that you head over to McDonald's and then they charge you like $10 for a Filet-O-Fish. No double patty, just a single a la carte Filet-O-Fish, and it costs $10, right? So what are the chances of you buying? You probably wouldn't, right? Because even though maybe the Filet-O-Fish tastes good or whatever it is, but all you can think of is the $10, and then you feel like it's not worth it. Like, what the hell, right? It doesn't even make sense at all. But if today you pay the same $10 and then McDonald's offer you, hey, you know what? Not only going to get this burger, you're also going to get a large fries, plus one 6-piece nugget, a large Milo, apple pie, and a McFlurry. And then maybe, I don't know, some additional curly fries or whatever it is, or McWings even, right? So now if McDonald's adds all these things up, then suddenly the $10 seems like a bargain, right? It seems like, oh wow, it's worth it. If you think about it, right? Oh my God, paying $10 for all these things is worth it, right? So you want to ask yourself, right, is what changed between these two situations? The price didn't change, but what changed is the value that's being offered for them. Hopefully it drives the lesson across, which is, people don't really have a problem putting aside money, lack of money or budget or whatever it is. People don't usually have issues paying for a particular item or something, as long as the amount of value that they receive surpasses the price, and obviously assuming it solves a certain problem. So if you look at the reason why people object to investment fees, more often than not, right, it's because you might not have explained or positioned or justify why and what are these fees being paid for, right? Because you didn't say that, hey, why are they paying this? What is this 7%? Okay, maybe that's a bit high. What is this 2.9%, 4% charges? Like, what are they being paid for? Because if you don't do that, then they will just feel like it doesn't make sense for them to pay these fees. So the key job and the key purpose here when you're pitching investment plans, when it comes to fees, right, is to create so much perceived value that it surpasses the investment fee, right, to the extent whatever the investment fee is worth, right? So what I mean by that is like, if it's 3% and then you want to really explain like, okay, cool, why is this 3% being paid? It's because of A, B, C, D, right? And then there's all the good things that you talk about on like what's the reason why we pay for that, right? So because if you can do that, then people will feel a lot more justifiable, and it's just human nature, right? It feels like, okay, cool, it makes sense why I'm paying this, right? If you pitch it well, if you position it well, to some people they might feel like, oh wow, paying this 2.55% or 1 point whatever percent is totally worth it. Okay, so it really depends on like how you position it, and more importantly, you justify, what and why are these fees being paid for. That being said, I'm going to run through with you right now a framework, kind of like a thought process or mental framework on like, how to come up with reasons or explanation on why these fees is quote unquote like justified or worth it, or at least perceived to be more valuable and worth it, right, to that particular person. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, and this is things that you can do for like not even for investment plans, but also for other products as well, whether it's a life plan, a term plan, and whatnot. Okay, so we're going to run through this framework. So prepare your pen, paper, or whatever it is. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is let's talk about investment plan for in this particular context, right? But obviously, like I mentioned, you can do it for any other plans as well. So, or product. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to write down what's the feature, right? There are 3 columns, right? So the first one is like features. So if you look at like a investment plan, depending on which country you're from, but more often than not, right? One of the feature of a investment plan is that there's like automatic rebalancing of portfolio. Okay, automatic rebalancing of portfolio, right? So this is kind of like feature usually comes with the investment plan, or rather the company will handle it. But in the event that they don't, you can be the one providing the automatic rebalancing, right? Because it's just that you're the one doing the job for them, but it's automatic either way to the consumer, right? So that's the first. So you write down features. Then the second thing you're gonna write down is benefits, right? So the next thing I ask yourself is like, they always have this saying, right? Don't sell features, sell benefits, right? But I argue there's one more thing that we need to sell other than the benefits, okay? But anyways, there's a feature and then you want to talk about the benefits. So what is the benefit of automatic rebalancing of the portfolio? Like what is the benefit for the consumer? And of course, there's different benefits. One feature can have different benefits, okay? Depending on how you think of it and how you want to convey the benefit to the consumer, okay? But one of the benefits of automatic rebalancing is it can help them to stay within their desired risk profile, okay? Stay within their desired risk profile, right? So this is kind of like one of the benefits of that particular feature, okay? Like I mentioned, there's a lot more, right? So we covered 2 things. First, you write down the feature, and then you write down the benefits, right? There could be more than one benefit, you can write it down as well, okay? So that's that. Now the third thing, which is the most important, okay, let me just zoom this out, or maybe just, which is the most important that most people don't bother. So what people normally would do, right? What advisors normally would do is that they will take the feature and benefits and then they will just justify and explain it to the consumer, right? Hey, this plan has automatic rebalancing of portfolio. It can help you stay within your risk profile, yada yada, and blah blah blah, right? And then they go on to the next feature and then they sell the benefit. They go on to the next feature and then they sell the benefit. Now, this is where, like I mentioned, a lot of people say that you should not sell features to sell benefits, right? But I argue there's one more thing that most people don't sell, right? And the thing that they should sell is, let me write this down here. The next thing you should sell is problem. You need to sell the problem. You need to create like a problem such that the benefit feels good. So the reason why the feature or the benefit doesn't seem like it's that valuable is because it doesn't, at least the consumer doesn't see that it solves a specific problem. So what you want to do is that when you create a problem, you need to create a problem, a scenario for a problem. Then what happens is that when you offer this solution, suddenly solution seems like viable, right? It seems to be perceived of higher value because it makes sense. Because remember, at the end of the day, right, this is about sales, right? And sales is always about solving a problem. And in this case, what are we trying to sell? We're trying to sell the feature, right? We're trying to sell the benefits to justify the whatever percentage of the investment fee. So again, if you're trying to sell something, these features and benefits need to solve a specific problem. And if they do not solve a problem and you just sell benefit and features, it's usually a hit or miss when it comes to the pitching. Okay, so we're going to create a problem. Now, this is where it's one of the harder things that to do, but here's what you can do, right? Which is literally the easiest, right? So you look at your benefits, the problem is literally just the opposite of the benefit, right? So let's say the benefit is like stay within risk profile, right? So what is the problem? What the problem that is solved? Right? The problem that is solved is that your risk profile changes, right? When you invest, your risk profile changes. So therefore, the benefit of this automatic rebalancing is that it helps you stay within your desired risk profile. So of course, you want to elaborate a bit more. So the next thing you want to do is create a scenario for it, right? You want to explain to them like what is the problem or what are some of the problems when you invest, let's say, with a portfolio of mutual funds or whatever it is, right? So just to share with you, so one of the things you can do is to share with them one of the simpler analogy is like just for illustration purposes, okay? Let's say, for example, they invest in equity and bond, and let's say it's 50-50 equal weightage, right? And then what happens is that, over the time, let's say, assuming the market goes up, right? Assuming the market goes up, but the portfolio becomes, let's say, for example, here it's 70% and here is 30%, right? So this is bonds and then this is equity. So what happens is that as the market goes up, assuming that there's no other changes, no other additional capital, your portfolio have a higher weightage in terms of equity versus bonds. Even though like the entire portfolio went up, right? So instead of 10K now, it's 15K, right? But the portfolio becomes 70% equity, right? Purely because equity, if you understand the nature, it rises a lot faster and higher and everything else, okay? So it's by and large kind of like the problem, when the market goes up and what happens to their portfolio, even if they don't do anything. So then what's the problem here, right? The problem here is then you want to ask the consumer or the prospect, right? Hey, so Mrs. Prospect, whatever it is, so now this portfolio changes, right? So what do you think is going to happen? Do you think it's more risky in portfolio A or portfolio B? Because portfolio A is what you've chosen. What about portfolio B? So what happens is that then you say that, oh, portfolio B, of course, now is a lot of higher risk because now there's a higher weightage in terms of equity, for example. What happens is that then you ask them, so what do you think is going to happen? When there's higher risk, of course, there's higher returns, but it also means that you're not within your risk profile, right? And this is something that you might not be able to take it. This is something that you might not be able to stomach it during a fall, a recession, or whatever it is. And therefore, what do you think we need to do? Right? Then they will say, oh, probably need to shift back or whatever it is. Yeah, then exactly, right? You need to transfer or like convert it back to like 50-50 portfolio kind of thing. Maybe sell equities, buy bonds, or whatever it is, right? Inject more capital and whatnot, right? So that's why this is the reason. So, okay, so I pause here. So when I explain this analogy, right, then whatever that I'm doing right now is really creating a scenario for the problem, right? Creating a scenario for the problem, because the problem now is that their risk profile will change and then therefore they cannot sleep at night. Maybe they are at a higher risk per se, for example, right? So that's why they need to switch it back. So therefore, the benefits of this feature, automatic rebalancing, this is where it comes in to really help to solve this problem. And this is all automatic. You don't even need to worry about it. It's literally something that's handled by myself or by the company. Okay, so that's the first one. So if you look at it, right, what I did was that you write down the feature, talk about benefits, right, list down the benefits, and then figure out the problem, right? And then what happens is that then number 4 is create a scenario to explain to the prospect what is this problem all about, or what are the problems, and how this benefit or feature fits into it. That makes sense? So, I mean, hopefully it makes sense. Again, I'm not a very, very like super savvy investor or some accredited investor or whatever it is. So don't take my word for it, but I'm just saying like this is by and large how we can do it. Some of you might know better, whatever it is, okay? But I'm just coming from a sales standpoint, and this is how it is, okay? So this is how you will really kind of want to align it. So that's like first thing, right? So the next thing that we do is then you go through another feature, right? So automatic rebalancing a portfolio is one. The next feature, potentially, depending again on your plan and all that stuff, the next feature could be unlimited fund switches, right? That could be another one. Unlimited fund switches, right? And then what's the benefit of like unlimited fund switches? Basically without paying like additional charges and whatnot. Could be, for example, or rather the benefit of it, if I put it this way, is that you can capture more opportunities, reduce losses by changing out the funds, for example, or maybe diversify the investments, like you can buy another fund or whatever it is, okay, just for this could potentially be one of the benefit. Then you want to think of like what's the problem. Problem is that in the event that all these things happens, like in terms of whether they want to capture new market opportunity, whether they want to cut losses, they want to diversify or whatever it is. The thing is that every time that you need to do that, if let's say they do it with banks or whatnot, or with other platforms, usually what happens is that you need to pay a specific sales charge each time you buy, right? So then this is kind of like a problem, right? Because if let's say, for example, the market is going down, and if the market is going down, and then let's say, for example, the fundamentals of this fund changes, it isn't the best anymore based on your due diligence or whatever it is, then what happens is that then, maybe one of the things is that they should either sell or like put it into another fund that, that is potentially better, right? So what happens is that every time they do it, then they have to pay a specific percentage charge for it, right? And then the question that you ask your prospect is like, hey, every time you do that, you need to pay a specific percentage of it. What will you do? Because the funds goes down, but then at the same time, in order for you to switch to buy another fund, you need to pay, I don't know, 3%, for example, right? Then what do you think is going to happen? What will you do? And then some people are like, I'm not very sure. Wow, I don't know where I need to pay another 3% or whatever it is. Then you say, hey, exactly, right? Because you're going to be in this dilemma, don't know whether to switch out or not. And then if you do, you need to pay more percentage, blah, 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 whatever it is. So what happens is that you're caught in this dilemma. Now, that's the reason why we have unlimited fund switches, because then you can switch to any particular fund And at that point in time, without incurring more costs, or like every time you get a transaction, you need to pay money for it, right? So that's like the second analogy for this. Like this is unlimited fund switches is the feature. The benefits is like capture opportunity, losses, whatever is diversify. And then the third one is like the problem, right? Like what's the problem that you can create for it? Okay, so this is literally the problem that you can create, and then you have to show and pitch and explain to the prospect in whatever your style is, okay? So this is only a start, right? Because if you only pitch about automatic rebalancing portfolio, and then after that, you talk about unlimited fund switches, and then third one maybe is portfolio management, whatever it is, and then the fourth one could be premium holiday or whatever special features you have in your investment plan or whatnot, right? So when you come from that standpoint, then what's going to happen is that the fee, whether is it like 2.5% that they're paying, etc., right, will therefore feel more justifiable, because just like the McDonald's thing, right, like a la carte burger doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but when you start adding all these things, suddenly what changed is the perceived value of things that are getting changed, right? So that's what you kind of like want to create, okay? That's how you really want to go about it, to talk about features, benefits, and then talk about like how to create problems for the particular prospect in this manner, so that they really feel like, okay, cool. Now, it feels like this 1% more that I'm paying seems very, very justifiable based on all these things that's being mentioned. That's how you want to make them feel. Okay, so that's kind of like the big idea here. Of course, there's a lot more other benefits and all that stuff. And of course, please do. This is literally whatever I did is just like an illustration and example. There might be flaws in it, whatever it is, but I just created an example for it. So what you want to do is make sure you do your due diligence, make sure all these things are, that you are, whatever you're explaining is factually correct, because you don't want to get into trouble, right? You want to make sure that, your prospect or client doesn't make a complaint or whatnot, okay? But my whole point is, from a sales positioning standpoint, right, that you want to list down the features, write down the benefits, and then create like the problems for it, so that in your investment pitch, it can come off as a very good package, right? So you can start pitching it or mentioning from a point of like, okay, so most people will try to avoid talking about investment fees, right? So when you're in pitching, most people would like kind of like leave the investment fee stuff like to the end of the pitch and whatnot and all that stuff, right? But I recommend you probably want to put the investment fees or talk about it probably like halfway through your pitch, or rather if you're pitching about the product, you probably want to put it at the top or like halfway through, right? So that you get over it. In fact, you don't avoid it, right? Because once you're able to justify all this, you want to put it up front because it's a good thing. So what you can do is like, hey, you know what, Mr. Prospect? So obviously for this investment plan, there's a whatever 2.9% investment fee for that. And of course, it's not as cheap, or it is relatively higher compared to other platforms, and this I agree. But allow me to explain to you why are you paying this 2.9%, right? Because if you don't listen out to the reasons and whatnot, it doesn't make sense for anyone to pay this 2.9%. Okay, so the first reason why you are paying for this 2.9% is automatic rebalancing, because it helps stay within risk profile. The problem is blah 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 blah. Right, so that's kind of like what I do it. That's level 1, level 2, then feature number 3 or whatever it is, right? So you stack up all these things, and then by the time you finish, they will feel like, oh wow, okay, yeah, like not an issue, right? Most of the time they wouldn't have too much of an issue with it. But if they still have, then then you probably want to you probably have to really kind of like reframe another thinking, right? Again, this is not 100% that they will be like, oh, you know what, I will buy it, or like they will definitely don't have an issue with the investment fees, because the other thing to really think about is that some of these features or benefits that you sell might not be applicable to them, or they might not feel like it's that relevant, right? So again, it depends on the needs. But by and large, if you do it in this portion versus telling them that, oh, but your returns will be higher even after this, after the investment fees, or like, oh, there's a startup bonus or whatever it is, people usually will tend to think of the negative, which is like the investment fee, how high the investment fee is versus how high the startup bonus or something else that is better, right? So here's what you want to do, okay, just to conclude this entire thing. Hopefully it makes sense for you. First of all, in order to overcome investment fees or kind of like objections, that kind of sense, first thing you want to do is to list down like the features. Second thing, you list down the benefits. And then third one, create the problem, right, and a scenario for it, so that it helps to sell this entire feature, benefits kind of stuff, okay? Because if you don't have a problem, if you don't create a problem and you only sell feature and benefits, usually it's like a good to have for this group of people. It's like a, have law, don't have, right? So this is usually like what happens if you don't create the problems or explain the problems to them in the first place. Okay, so that being said, so the next time, like I mentioned, someone gives you an objection about investment fee, don't, try not to go like the usual way of like startup owners and all that stuff. It's usually based on my experience and based on like observations from countless of advisors that we coach, usually doesn't work out like the best, right? The worst, you start bashing other platforms, you start bashing robo advisors and all that stuff. Trust me, it doesn't make you look good as well. So do not try to do that, right? So what you want to do is to want to increase the value of the features and benefits and like give reasons why the fees are worth paying. Okay, so if you find it useful, I do really hope that you find it useful. But if you do find it useful, right, please like, comment, and subscribe, okay, or share this video with your friends and whatnot, and hopefully use it, and then you're able to close more cases when it comes to investments and whatnot. Okay, so if not, cheers, and I'll see you in the next video.